here because the mainstream media let you down.
Hello, I'm David Wallace, and here's the news. Tonight I'll be sitting in for James D. Fiore and previewing Political Dark Arts Game Theory. A lot of things going on in the news today, a lot of fuckery, for lack of a better word. We've seen some seismic shifts in the polls, and the vibe on the street is definitely singing that it's time for Pierre to leave. We are watching a historic meltdown. A meltdown that has come in large part in thanks to the policies and rhetoric of Donald Trump and the resignation of Justin Trudeau, the lost love of the Conservative Party of Canada, and definitely of Mr. Poilievre. We got a lot to get into, and it's going to be a very short run up until the election. And some rather shaking things, I believe, will take place. I'll give you some of the reasoning behind that opinion and lay out a case. Now, it's very important up front to get this out. We will not be saying anything on this show that will be cause for anyone to take legal action. We will not give them the chance. We will simply provide scenarios backed up with interesting information, and we will depend on audience participation in many respects. And together, we may arrive at a conclusion which I'll be important to state is certainly theoretical, not stating outright as fact, and certainly conclusions that should be tested by accredited journalists in this country and others. Just wanted to get that out up front. I don't want James to get a little nervous that I'm going to get his logo sued. I think that's all it is, but still be a very nasty thing to sue his logo. Okay, so for the last several years, both on prior media appearances on other networks, James's as well, I have dropped hints and strongly suggested that Doug Ford's manifest destiny was to be the Prime Minister of Canada, and that he would ultimately run for that job. I've had people respond with, he doesn't speak French, he's driven Ontario into the ground, that there's no precedence for this. And of course, you're absolutely correct on all counts. I would like to clarify, when I say that Doug Ford is going to make a push for the Prime Minister's chair, I'm not stating this is because it's something I want. I'm not saying this because I approve. I'm merely stating what I believe to be the culmination of a very long road, a road that began with Doug's entry into politics on the provincial level in 2018. It's been inevitable in many respects that this, or something very near this, featuring Mr. Ford or Mr. Kenny in Alberta, would happen, regardless of who the leader of the Conservative Party or the Liberal Party of Canada was. Don't mean to leave you out, NDP. You kind of did that to yourself on a national level. You know, sorry, Jagmeet, but being a rat bastard, wussy, turncoat, wishy-washy. Actually, I don't even know what you are. No offense personally. It's just you've driven that party into the ground. Unfortunate. But back to Doug. In 2018, when I returned from Russia from a documented trip, I was given a piece of business to assist in Mr. Ford's rise. Now, I've covered this before in other podcasts. It is in the raw data, the Klondike Papers, which were released to all the media several years ago by Richard Marsh. Everything's in there. So if you are curious, you could go back several episodes and we'll touch on it from here to there. But I've laid out how the Patrick Brown, at least my part of it, situation went down. Doug has proven to be an extremely successful CEO of Ontario, because that's what he is. It's a business. All politics are business. I don't want to condescend or insult people whose political values are well established. People are liberals. People are conservatives. People are New Democrats. Hell, people are Greens, whatever. The people who support these parties and make up their grassroots are sincere in their beliefs. They hold these values. This is why they gravitate to these parties in the first place. However, the people who ascend, especially on a national level, in political circles, by the time they have gotten there, cut their deals, and believe me, deals are required. The financial requirements that it takes to run are impossible for an everyday citizen. So what you find are the same recycled candidates over and over, and these candidates are sponsored, meaning they are owned, obligated, whichever way you want to slice it. These guys, by the time they get where they get, it's because a lot of people helped them get there, and they owe. And they owe for as long as they're in politics. And that's the way it is. No matter what your political stripe is, you don't bite the hand that feeds. It's why fixers, and I may be the only really public one, but it's why fixers work for the highest bidder, because they understand that ideology is front public facing and factual reality of human frailties is our business. It's why last year I took the David Parker job. I didn't want to help the UCP or the Conservative Party, but David Parker was a dangerous sociopath, in my opinion. Again, I don't want to slander anybody. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose him. But on my wacko meter, he was off the charts. And he hated Jenny Byrne. And quite honestly, he was causing quite a ruckus for certain conservatives, and certain conservatives are still my friends. They may not be in office or in the machine, but they are players and they are financial backers of that party. And they didn't like seeing a future cult leader, allegedly, pissing in Jenny Burns' dinner. David hides a great deal of resentment for Jenny. He believes that he should be in her position. The fact that he isn't in her position speaks to the belief in conservative circles, namely Stephen Harper, and large financial backers. The reason he's not in that position is, quite frankly, he's not as good as Jenny. That's not to judge them as people. It's simply to say that Jenny Byrne has been in this game for a long time and has learned from some very, very talented dark magicians. And she's good, which is why when I tell you that cutting off the media, not allowing them to embed during a campaign, his new sloganing, his hell, even the shills know it's over when they're talking about make it too big to rig. I mean, when you're talking about the things rigged before it started, you're fucked. And they should know they're spit on the street, they're dead, which means this has been called. They couldn't do anything about the timing, but the way they fumbled the football tells me he was never meant to carry it to the end zone. Doug is coming. Doug's relationship down south is sealed. It's been sealed for years. There's a gentleman who used to own a company in Toronto. It was called Midland, I believe it was, a Russian gentleman, very, very talented man, put together some financing for a building in Toronto many years ago. These circles, Doug traveled in. Doug was initiated into. Doug is a reliable CEO, and I say this because he has just about broken out Ontario completely. Healthcare is destroyed. Policing has been overrun and infiltrated. Our school system is crumbling. Our very infrastructure is crumbling. Projects are being built that have no utility. No utility other than the billions of dollars that flow through Doug's associates' hands and go back overseas to his other associates. Some of the same people who kind of chipped in on the let's get rid of Patrick Brown job. But Patrick has come around, and he and Doug will work very well together. Very, very well. Because Patrick is at heart a pragmatist and a businessman. And Pierre's yesterday's news, just like he thought Patrick was. Some things are going to happen with the markets extremely soon. We are, for all intents and purposes, in World War III. The signals that we are getting in the media are meant simply to distract. War is soon. Economic collapse is soon. Our dollar it's doomed. And the people who have money, they know this. It's why you see your Warren Buffetts and your other whales, they cash out. They're sitting on record amounts of cash. And that money is not going back into the market. They are not going to buy the dip. But to prolong this thing, to limp it through, we need war, because war is good business. And the number one source of war machine, ammunition, and machinery are Russia and the United States. And those armaments, they arm their allies around the world to fund war. Ukraine is not going to be wrapped up anytime soon. This ceasefire is nothing more than a small lull. Trump is insisting on peacekeepers in any peace, Ukrainian peacekeepers in Soviet territory. That's a non-starter. Trump is a frenemy, not an enemy. The tactics of this administration and the Biden administration may be different, but the ultimate outcome and the strategy in terms of where this is going are the same. One is done through direct confrontation, and one is done through subterfuge. But it is meant to prolong and extend this war. To distract you, we have had every damn thing thrown at us. JFK files, drones. How about drones? Anybody remember drones? That's so January, I know. Oh, those were ours, really? We have had more news come at us in the last year than ever before in the news cycle, and it is numbing the population. They need this because they need you polarized during this election. You see, if you believe that your candidates are truly, truly different from one another, then you're mistaken. I'm not saying your values are mistaken. I'm not saying the message that you're buying is mistaken. What I'm saying is that you cannot put your faith in a political party to fix this situation, because there is no fixing it. It's a mess. We are more polarized than ever. In a game theory scenario, what do you think is going to happen? If there is complete conservative collapse and the liberals win this election, do you think the conservatives, for the fourth election in a row, are simply going to wait another 4 years? That won't be allowed to happen. The same way the convoy was used for political purposes, hijacked in a way. This election, regardless of the outcome, will be used in the same way to further divide Canadians. The language has become extremely hostile in the United States. We're talking about the use of the term domestic terrorist. We are talking about laws that are being enacted or threatened to be enacted, or annexations. These are almost unprecedented in our history, and they're becoming daily occurrences. So over the next several weeks, the political dark arts is going to play a couple of games. We are going to talk step by step of how Doug Ford is moving on to federal politics and intends to run for the Prime Minister of Canada. And I'm not saying far into the future. I'm saying irregardless of how this election rolls out, the end result will be Doug Ford running for Prime Minister. The other situation is one that's close to my heart. There has been an individual implanted, embedded, you could say, in Canadian politics, who has acted as a source of foreign intelligence for decades. The first time I knew of this individual was in early 1991. I had apparently met this individual, or at least seen them when I was at the same place, in 1989 during a trip to Moscow. This individual is very well known. They have helped shape opinion, policy. They have worked with leaders across generations. And they are even still today active on social media, as pundits, as reliable sources of information for the Canadian public. Now, what is the very best way to put somebody in place and have no one suspect them? By making them an enemy. It's a long story. It starts out at McGill University many decades ago. And we're going to break it down because I'm definitely going to need some help from the public to put pressure on this person, because they will come forward. It's just a question of how long it takes. So, a fairly short episode tonight. But we've got a lot of fireworks in store. Pierre is a dead man walking, politically speaking. Carney seems in ascendance, but very soon they'll be going after his wife. She is a very accomplished individual, from what I understand, but there are relationships that I am told that they are going to exploit, or at least the appearance of relationships. Are they true? Are they false? I don't know. I don't care. I mean, in my former profession, you don't really have to. You find out where the conflict is, you find out what the conflict is, and then you go to work. You see, in any conflict, there are two sides, and I'm on both of them. It works almost every time. What a lot of people don't realize is when you're working for them, you're actually working for somebody else against them. And there are a lot of fixtures on the ground right now. The phone has been ringing off the hook. There are many campaigns, many ridings where, crucial ridings, I may add, where the differential will be very small. And there will be a tremendous amount of fuckery going on. Now, this fuckery is accomplished not only on a local level, but through third-party media support groups. You may have heard of some of them. Now, I'm not going to go out and accuse anybody of being a shill, but I'm sure you probably have some idea of the news organizations I'm speaking about. Those organizations will do a great deal of smearing in the next several months. And the best part is they don't care if it's true or not. They don't need to because they are funded. They are funded from very, very wealthy individuals. Wealthy individuals, the same ones I spoke of before, who basically buy candidates. And those candidates, when elected, make decisions that benefit these very wealthy individuals. Now, again, I'm not going to say anybody's guilty here, but I could say that maybe people could look at the Greenbelt situation in Ontario or the Alberta Health Services fandango and the UCP that is going on right now. And maybe you'll take my point. It's not about policy. It's not about good governance. It's about getting away with as much as you can. Now, granted, optically, one party seems to do that more than the other. But that's not for me to say. There are plenty of scandals to go around. And there is plenty of money to go around, hence the scandals. Mr. Stephen Harper is quite possibly the most powerful non-politician politician on the face of this planet. He has become the glue that holds together a very precarious alliance between industry, innovation, and religion. All whose balance sheet depends on conservative or pseudo-conservative, or at least stage-dressing conservative governments. This is big business. And on the other side, we see more established global financial interests that are fighting hard to maintain their hold on power. It's a worldwide phenomenon. And unfortunately, our election will most likely be decided by powerful individuals who are not even Canadian, who don't live here, who are not interested in a free society in many, many ways. We hear people throw around the term World Economic Forum and UN, and these are buzzwords. And I'm not saying they're good organizations. I'm not saying they're bad organizations. I'm not going to say anything. I don't need to. But these boogeymen, who are bad enough on their own, are used as boogeymen when the real grift is going on off stage. Think of your BlackRocks, your State Streets, your Liberty Mutuals, the giant funds that control basically every company. We hear people talk about Brookfield. Why don't you ask Mr. Harper about some of his dealings with Brookfield when he was with, was it Coilings? Coilings, I believe it was. Some of the mining operations in Colombia, the TD Bank. I remember saying over a year ago on this podcast that TD Bank was being investigated with money pouring in from the drug trade, and that there was a huge problem, and it spread to U.S. banks. People said I was crazy, but then it was reported. Always watch where the money goes. As the money goes, that's where the politics go. And right now, the smart money is all heading towards Carney. That's because Pierre's message petered out. And it petered out because Donald Trump was reelected. If you're a liberal, you ought to get down on your hands and knees and thank your lucky stars that Donald Trump was elected. Because under no such circumstance, under a democratic government in the United States of America, is a reelection of a liberal government possible. It's just fact. But a funny thing happened on the way to the coronation, and Donald Trump threw a gear. And now Mark Carney is the Prime Minister of Canada. And there are a lot of organizations. Again, I think you know who they are. They like to go to press conferences and get arrested and ask questions. I mean, it's spread to our mainstream media as well. How do you answer certain questions? When you state factually the information and then you are questioned on your integrity. These are questions that simply haven't been thrown at Mr. Polyev. And then you have to ask yourself why. But unfortunately, the general public doesn't look behind the mainstream facade. They take something at face value. But who owns the purveyors of your news? Who owns them? If an American conglomerate, actually a global conglomerate, with American right-wing backing, owns your mainstream media, they control the message. And in a typical, traditional election cycle, that would be enough. But with the advent of social media, there have been other voices that have trickled in, and that trickle has turned into an avalanche. These are strange times. Oh, Brookfield, another real fun one here. Brookfield was run by a gentleman named, at least a part of it anyways, Frank McKenna, former premier. Frank and Brian, the late Prime Minister, Mr. Brian Mulroney, were, I believe they were roommates. They were certainly best buddies. I got a lot of work back in the day from those guys. And they paid goddamn fabulously. Conservatives used to spend, big time. They spend now far and wide, but, the big institutions are still cheap. We're going to break it down. We're going to break down Doug's relationships in the United States. We're going to break it down with the lobbyists, the owners of certain companies in the Florida region, attorneys, my old friend Bud Cummins. We're going to talk about Bud and Giuliani. We're going to talk about Ukraine and how all this shit ties in. And if you're really curious, go back through the Raw Klondike papers. All the emails are there. Doug Ford, 2018, I was there. Alberta, Jason Kenney, voter fraud, I was there. If you go through the papers, you'll see I was a lot of places. And that was by design. It's my work. But you need to ask yourself, who put me there? And that's what we're going to get into. Because that will answer the question of how Doug Ford will become prime minister. And that will also answer the question of exactly who has been the greatest traitor and the most well-hidden mole in Canadian political history. And that's all I got for tonight. So we're going to upgrade the audio, the video, the package, but it's dependent on you, the viewers. If you want the bells and whistles, if you want us to be able to convey the information, please donate to the show. The links are on my Twitter. You don't have to. If you want to, it's great. I've given up on the legal process. There was some jackoff on there who called me and offered to help. And I told them I wasn't appealing the Wenzel ruling because, well, hell. It's one of those things where I was never even served. And by the time I was served, I was already in default. No, what I'm trying to reverse is my ability to speak on details because those details are vital to the rest of the story. And if I can't speak publicly, well, but I won't violate the order because, as we know, the process in Alberta is certainly less than pristine and I dare say as corrupt as fuck. But what do I know? Again, that's just allegedly my opinion, speculation, all that bullshit. Let's see if you can sue me for that. But we're going to get into it. And we're going to cause a whole hell of a lot of shit. But this can be as big as you guys make it. We make it big. We get the people on that we need to have on. And we get to the bottom of things and we make a noise so loud that they hear it all the way in Ottawa. Because once they hear it and once the questions are asked, then answers have to come. And hopefully we avert something. And when I say we avert something, I mean we avert a government so draconian and so shamelessly corrupt. So corrupt as to make organized crime on any level before obsolete. In fact, if Doug Ford does manage to become the Prime Minister of Canada, it will not be a government. It'll be a family, a mafia. And you will be its victims. And it's coming. It's coming. What you're seeing now is PP in his death throes. Sorry, Pierre. You're seeing Pierre in his death throes. I don't even know if he knows he's done. But it's over. Jenny Byrne didn't send him on this new platform thinking he'd win. So the switch is on. But will it be Doug? Will it be Jason Kenney? I got a feeling we're going to have a pretty wide open field and a very unusual election. In fact, one that is unprecedented. Every rule will be broken. And you're going to be along for the ride. Tally ho. And I shall see you tomorrow. Or not tomorrow. Probably next week.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.